Liverpool under Jurgen Klopp was the same. Everyone knew they wanted to press high and attack quickly, but they could also control games, sit deeper when needed, and change their shape during matches. This is what separates good managers from great ones. Great managers have a clear identity and philosophy, but they're not slaves to it. They know when to adapt. How Amorim adapts his tactics. So how exactly does Amorim show this flexibility? What does it look like in practice? Let's break it down into different areas. First, there's the formation. Yes, Amorim loves his 3-4-3, but is not married to it. He's used 4-3-3, 3-5-2, and variations in between. The formation is just a starting point. What matters is how the team functions within that structure. Sometimes Amorim would start a game with one formation and then switch during the match. Maybe the opposition is causing problems down the wings, so he adds an extra midfielder to provide more cover. Maybe his team is chasing a goal, so he pushes an extra attacker forward. Second, there's the style of play. Amorim's teams can press high and aggressively when that makes sense. They can also drop deeper and hit teams on the counter-attack when facing stronger opposition. They can control possession and build patiently, or they can play more direct and get the ball forward quickly. Third, there's the player roles. This is really interesting. Amorim doesn't just give players one job and expect them to do it every single game. He adjusts what he asks from his players based on the situation. For example, his wing-backs might push really high in some games, basically acting as wingers. In other games, they might stay more conservative and focus on defensive duties. It depends on the opponent and the game situation. His central midfielders might be asked to control the tempo in one game, then press aggressively and win the ball high up the pitch in another game. This flexibility extends to individual players too. Amorim is known for developing players and helping them add new skills to their game. He doesn't just accept what a player can do, he works on expanding their abilities. Reading the game, in-game adjustments. One of the most impressive things about Amorim is how he reads games and makes adjustments while they're happening. This is a skill that not all managers have. Some managers make their game plan, send the players out, and then just hope it works. If it doesn't, they might make some substitutions, but they don't fundamentally change the approach. Amorim is different. He's constantly analyzing what's happening on the pitch. Is the opposition exploiting a weakness? Are his players struggling in certain areas? Is there an opportunity to take advantage of? He's not afraid to make bold changes. Sometimes he'll switch the formation completely at halftime. Sometimes he'll change the roles of certain players. Sometimes he'll adjust the pressing triggers or the defensive line. This ability to read the game and adapt is what makes coaching at the highest level so difficult. You need to understand football at a deep level. You need to see patterns and problems that most people miss. And you need the courage to make changes, even if they're unconventional. There were games at Sporting where Amorim's halftime adjustments completely turned things around. The team would be struggling in the first half, then come out after the break and look like a completely different side. That's not just motivational talk in the dressing room. That's tactical changes that fix problems and exploit opportunities. Learning from other managers. Another aspect of Amorim's flexibility is his willingness to learn from other managers. He doesn't think he has all the answers. He studies other coaches and takes ideas from them. You can see influences from various managers in how Amorim's teams play. There are elements of Pep Guardiola's positional play. There are hints of Jurgen Klopp's aggressive pressing. There are aspects of the tactical flexibility that you see from managers like Carlo Ancelotti. But Amorim doesn't just copy these managers. He takes ideas and adapts them to his own philosophy and the players he has available. He creates his own unique blend. This is an important trait for any manager. Football is constantly evolving. New ideas emerge all the time. If you're not learning and adapting, you're falling behind. The best managers are students of the game. They watch other teams, they analyze trends, they think about how the game is changing. And then they incorporate what they learn into their own approach. Player development and tactical education. Here's something that doesn't get talked about enough. Amorim's flexibility helps him develop players better. Think about it. If a manager only plays one system, players only learn how to play in that system. They become specialists in one way of playing. That's fine if they stay with that manager forever. But what happens when they move to another club or the manager leaves? Amorim's approach is different. By exposing players to different systems and different roles, he's making them better, more complete footballers. His players learn how to defend in different ways. They learn how to build up play from the back. They learn how to press. They learn positional discipline. They learn when to take risks and when to play it safe. This is especially valuable for young players. If you're a young defender playing for Amorim, You might play in a back 3 one week and a back for the next week. You might be asked to play wide one game and centrally the next. You're constantly learning and developing new skills. The same goes for attackers and midfielders. Amorim's system requires players to be smart, to understand space, to know when to hold their position and when to move. Several players developed significantly under Amorim at Sporting. They arrived as promising youngsters and left as complete players ready for the biggest stages in European football. That's not a coincidence. That's the result of excellent coaching and tactical education. The mental side, keeping players engaged. There's another benefit to tactical flexibility that people sometimes overlook. It keeps players mentally engaged. Football can become routine. If you do the same thing day after day, week after week, it can get boring. Even professional players, who love the game, can fall into patterns where they're just going through the motions. When a manager regularly changes things up, it keeps players on their toes. They have to stay focused. They have to keep learning. They can't just rely on muscle memory and habit. Amorim's training sessions are known for being varied and engaging. Players have to think. They work on different scenarios and different situations. One day might focus on building up play, another on defensive organization, another on attacking transitions. This approach keeps things fresh. It maintains high levels of concentration and effort. Players come to training not knowing exactly what they'll be working on, so they have to stay alert and engaged. It also shows players that the manager trusts them. When Amorim asks a player to perform a new role or adapt to a different system, he's showing faith in that player's intelligence and ability. That builds confidence and strengthens the relationship between manager and player preparation and analysis. Behind all this flexibility is an enormous amount of preparation and analysis. Ruben Amorim, I don't play one system. The truth behind his tactical genius. Hey everyone and welcome back to United Daily Updates. If you're new here, make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel where we bring you the latest news, tactical analysis, and exclusive insights about Manchester United and football in general. We're your trusted source for everything United, and today we're diving deep into something that's been on everyone's mind lately. Introduction. Have you ever wondered what makes a truly great manager? Is it the trophies they win? The players they develop? Or is it something deeper, something that happens on the training ground and in the tactical meetings that we never get to see? Today we're talking about Ruben Amorim, and more specifically, his recent statement that's got everyone talking, I don't play one system. This might sound simple at first, but trust me, there's so much more to unpack here than you might think. When you hear the name Ruben Amorim, what's the first thing that comes to mind? For most people, it's that famous 3-4-3 formation that brought Sporting CP back to glory. But here's the thing, and this is what makes Amorim so special. He's not just a one-trick pony. He's not that manager who stubbornly sticks to one way of playing no matter what happens on the pitch. In this blog post, we're going to break down everything you need to know about Amorim's tactical approach. We'll look at his coaching philosophy, why flexibility matters in modern football, and what this all means for the future. So grab a cup of coffee, get comfortable, and let's dive in. Who is Ruben Amorim? Before we get into the tactical stuff, let's talk about who Ruben Amorim actually is. Why should we care about what he says about systems and tactics? Ruben Amorim is a Portuguese football manager who's been making waves in European football over the past few years. He's young, he's ambitious, and he's already achieved things that some managers never accomplish in their entire careers. Amorim had a decent playing career. He was a midfielder who played for some big clubs in Portugal, including Benfica and Braga. He even got called up to play for the Portuguese national team. But it's as a manager where he's really made his name. After hanging up his boots, Amorim didn't waste time. He got his coaching badges and started working his way up. His first big job was at Braga, and even there, people could see he had something special. But it was when he moved to Sporting CP that everything changed. The Sporting CP success story. Let me ask you something. Do you know how long Sporting CP went without winning the Portuguese league title before Amorim arrived? It was 19 years. Nearly 2 decades of waiting, watching their rivals Benfica and Porto dominate Portuguese football year after year. Then Amorim came in, and everything changed. In his first full season, 2020 to 2021, he led Sporting to the league title. They didn't just win it, they dominated. They lost just one game all season. One game. That's the kind of performance that turns heads across Europe. But here's what's really impressive. He didn't do it with the biggest budget. He didn't go out and buy a bunch of superstars. He worked with what he had, developed young players, and created a team that was greater than the sum of its parts. And he didn't stop there. Amorim won another league title with Sporting. He turned them back into a force in Portuguese football. Young players were developing under his guidance. The team played attractive, winning football. Clubs across Europe started paying attention. The famous 3-4-3 formation. Now, when people talk about Amorim's tactics, they usually start with his 3-4-3 formation. And for good reason. This formation became his trademark at Sporting CP. But what exactly is a 3-4-3? Let me break it down in simple terms. You have 3 centre-backs at the back. These are your main defenders. Then you have 2 wing-backs, 1 on each side. These players are super important because they have to defend when needed but also push forward to support the attack. In the middle, you have 2 central midfielders who control the game. And up front, you have 3 attackers, usually a striker in the middle with 2 wide forwards on either side. The beauty of this system is in how it works. When you attack, you suddenly have 5 or 6 players pushing forward. Those wing-backs become almost like wingers. The wide forwards cut inside. You create overloads and numerical advantages in different areas of the pitch. When you defend, those wing-backs drop back, and suddenly you've got 5 defenders. You become really solid and hard to break down. Amorim made this system work brilliantly at Sporting. His players knew exactly what to do in every situation. The transitions from defense to attack were lightning quick. They pressed high up the pitch, won the ball back quickly, and attacked with pace and purpose. But here's where it gets interesting, and this is the whole point of what we're talking about today. Amorim never saw this as the only way to play. I don't play one system. What does this actually mean? So Amorim says he doesn't play one system. What does that really mean? Is he just saying this to sound smart, or is there real substance behind it? Let me explain it this way. Some managers are very rigid in their approach. They have one system, one way of playing, and they stick to it no matter what. You could call it being principled. You could also call it being stubborn. These managers will try to fit every player into their system, even if it doesn't suit that player's strengths. They'll use the same tactics against every opponent, regardless of whether that opponent is strong or weak, defensive or attacking. Amorim is different. When he says he doesn't play one system, what he's really saying is that he adapts. He's flexible. He reads the game and changes things based on what's happening. Think about it like this. If you're a chef, you don't make the same meal every single day, right? Sometimes you make pasta, sometimes you make a roast, sometimes you make a salad. It depends on what ingredients you have, who you're cooking for, and what the occasion is. Football is the same way. The best managers adjust their approach based on the players they have available, the strengths and weaknesses of the opposition, and what's happening in the game. The importance of tactical flexibility in modern football. Why does tactical flexibility matter so much in today's game? Can't a manager just have a good system and stick to it? Well, they could, but they probably won't be as successful as they could be. Let me explain why. Football has evolved massively over the past decade or two. Teams study each other in incredible detail now. Every club has a team of analysts who watch hours and hours of video, breaking down exactly how the opposition plays. If you always play the same way, teams will figure you out. They'll know exactly what you're going to do and prepare specifically to stop it. You become predictable, and predictable teams are easier to beat. The best teams in the world right now all have one thing in common. They can play in different ways. Manchester City under Pep Guardiola is a perfect example. Yes, they have their core principles, but watch them closely and you'll see they change things game by game. Sometimes they play with a false 9, sometimes with a traditional striker. Sometimes they build up slowly, sometimes they go direct. Amorim doesn't just make changes on a whim. Everything is based on careful study and planning. Before every game, Amorim and his coaching staff spend hours analyzing the opposition. They watch previous games, looking for patterns and tendencies. Where do they defend well? Where are they vulnerable? How do they build up play? What happens when they lose the ball? They also analyze their own team. Which players are in good form? Who might be carrying a knock? What combinations have been working well in training? All this information feeds into the game plan. Amorim might decide that the opposition's left back is weak defensively, so he'll overload that side. He might notice that they struggle against pace in behind, so he'll instruct his forwards to make those runs. But here's the key, he has multiple plans ready. He has a primary approach, but he also has backup options if things aren't working. He knows what adjustments he might need to make and prepares for different scenarios. This level of preparation is what allows him to be flexible during games. He's already thought through the possibilities. When something happens on the pitch, he's ready to respond. Modern football clubs have extensive analysis departments now. They use data and video to break down every aspect of the game. Amorim embraces this. He uses all the tools available to him, but he also trusts his own eyes and instincts. Man management and communication. Being tactically flexible also requires excellent man management and communication skills. It's one thing to have a tactical idea, it's another to get players to execute it. Amorim is known as an excellent communicator. He can explain complex tactical concepts in ways that players understand. He doesn't use complicated jargon or confusing instructions. He keeps things clear and simple. Before a game, players know exactly what's expected of them. They understand their role, their responsibilities, and how they fit into the overall game plan. There's no confusion or uncertainty. But Amorim also empowers his players. He doesn't micromanage every little detail. He gives them the framework and the principles, then trusts them to make good decisions on the pitch. This is important because football is a fluid, dynamic game. No matter how much you plan, unexpected situations will arise. Players need to be able to think for themselves and adapt in the moment. Amorim also has strong relationships with his players. They trust him because they know he's trying to help them improve. When he asks them to play in a different position or adapt their game, they do it willingly because they believe in him. This trust goes both ways. Amorim shows faith in his players, and they repay that faith with effort and commitment. Lessons from Sporting CP. Let's look at some specific examples from Amorim's time at Sporting CP that illustrate his tactical flexibility. In the title-winning season, there were games where Sporting completely dominated possession, controlling the ball for 70% of the match and slowly breaking down the opposition. There were other games where they had less possession but were devastatingly effective on the counter-attack, hitting teams with rapid transitions. Against stronger opponents in European competitions, Amorim often adjusted his approach. He might set his team up to be more compact defensively, looking to frustrate the opposition and create chances on the break. The underlying principles remained, but the emphasis shifted. There were also games where Sporting faced deep, defensive opponents who sat in a low block. Breaking down these teams requires patience and creativity. Amorim would adjust by bringing on extra creative players, changing the positioning to create overloads in wide areas, or instructing his wing-backs to get even higher up the pitch. When chasing a game, Amorim wasn't afraid to throw caution to the wind. He'd push more players forward, take risks, and commit more numbers to attacks. When protecting a lead, he'd tighten things up, bring on more defensively-minded players, and focus on controlling the game. These weren't random changes. They were calculated adjustments based on the situation and what the team needed. What this means for his managerial career. So what does all this tactical flexibility mean for Amorim's future as a manager? It means he has the tools to succeed at the highest level. The biggest clubs in the world want managers who can adapt. They face different challenges every week. Strong opponents, different tactical approaches, various competitions with different requirements. A manager who can only play one way will eventually get found out. A manager who can adapt and change will thrive. Amorim has already shown he can win trophies. He's shown he can develop players. He's shown he can implement an attractive style of play. And now we're seeing that he has the tactical flexibility and intelligence to compete with the best managers in the game. This is why top clubs have been interested in him. This is why his name gets mentioned whenever a big job becomes available. People in football recognize that he has something special. Of course, success at one club doesn't guarantee success everywhere. Moving to a bigger club brings different pressures, different expectations, and different challenges. But Amorim's approach gives him a better chance of succeeding because he can adapt to new situations. The philosophy behind the flexibility. Let's dig deeper into the philosophy that drives Amorim's approach. Why is flexibility so important to him? What's the underlying belief system? At its core, Amorim believes that football is about solving problems. Every game presents a unique challenge. Your job as a manager is to figure out the best way to overcome that challenge with the resources you have available. This problem-solving mindset is fundamental to how he approaches the game. He doesn't see tactics as a rigid set of rules. He sees them as tools that you can use in different ways depending on the situation. Amorim also believes in empowering players rather than constraining them. Yes, there's a tactical framework and structure, but within that structure, players have freedom to express themselves and make decisions. This approach requires intelligent players who understand the game. It's not enough to just be physically talented. You need to be able to read situations, recognize patterns, and make good choices. That's why Amorim invests so much time in the tactical education of his players. He's not just coaching them for the next game, he's developing them as footballers who can think critically about the game. Comparing Amorim to other top managers. To really understand what makes Amorim special, it helps to compare him to other top managers. Take someone like Pep Guardiola. Guardiola has very clear principles that he rarely compromises on. His teams will always try to dominate possession, play out from the back, and control the game through positional superiority. Within that framework, there's variation, but the core approach is consistent. Diego Simeone is another example. His teams are always organized, disciplined, and difficult to break down. They work incredibly hard without the ball and are efficient in transition. Again, there's some variation, but the identity is strong and consistent. These managers are incredibly successful, so their approach clearly works. But there's a trade-off. Sometimes their principled approach can work against them. There are situations where a bit more flexibility might help, but they stick to their guns. The role of set pieces and details. Tactical flexibility isn't just about formations and systems. It also extends to other aspects of the game like set pieces. Amorim pays close attention to set pieces, both offensively and defensively. This is an area where clever coaching can make a real difference. His teams work on multiple set-piece routines. They have different plays they can use depending on the situation. This variety makes them harder to defend against because opponents can't just prepare for one specific routine. Defensively, Amorim adjusts his set-piece organization based on the opposition. If they're facing a team with particularly strong aerial threats, he might use zonal marking. Against other teams, he might prefer man-to-man marking. Sometimes he uses a hybrid approach. These details matter. Set pieces account for a significant percentage of goals in football. A manager who pays attention to these situations and adapts his approach can gain a real edge. It's the same with pressing triggers, defensive transitions, and other tactical details. Amorim thinks about all these elements and adjusts them game by game. Challenges of being flexible. Now, it's important to acknowledge that tactical flexibility also brings challenges. It's not all positive. One challenge is that it can be harder to build a strong, consistent identity. If you're constantly changing things, players might feel less certain about what's expected. There's a risk of confusion. This is why communication is so important. Amorim has to be very clear about what he wants and why he's making changes. Players need to understand the reasoning. Another challenge is that it requires more work. It's easier to just drill one system over and over until everyone knows it perfectly. Preparing multiple approaches and being ready to adapt means more time spent on the training ground, more video sessions, more tactical meetings. Amorim clearly believes this extra work is worth it, but it's demanding for both the coaching staff and the players. There's also the risk of overthinking. Sometimes the best approach is to keep things simple and let your players' quality shine through. If you're constantly adjusting and changing, you might actually make things more complicated than they need to be. Good managers know when to adapt and when to keep things simple. This is a judgment call that comes with experience. The future of coaching. Looking at the bigger picture, Amorim represents a trend in modern football coaching. The game is moving toward managers who combine strong principles with tactical flexibility. The days of managers who only know one system are probably numbered, at least at the highest level. The game is too complex now, the opposition too well prepared. You need to be able to adapt. At the same time, having no clear identity at all doesn't work either. Players need structure and direction. They need to know what the team is trying to do. The future belongs to managers who can strike this balance, clear principles and identity, but with the flexibility to adapt when necessary. Amorim is at the forefront of this trend. He's showing what modern coaching can look like. He's proving that you don't have to choose between having a philosophy and being pragmatic. You can do both. What can other managers learn? So what lessons can other managers, at all levels of the game, take from Amorim's approach? First, don't be dogmatic. Yes, it's important to have principles and beliefs, but be willing to question them. Be open to different approaches. What works in one situation might not work in another. Second, invest time in understanding your opponents. The more you know about the teams you're facing, the better you can prepare. Look for their strengths and weaknesses. Think about how you can exploit vulnerabilities and neutralize threats. Third, empower your players. Give them the tools and knowledge they need to make good decisions. Don't try to control every little detail. Trust your players to think for themselves. Fourth, keep learning. Watch other teams, study other managers, think about new ideas. Football is constantly evolving. If you stop learning, you stop improving. Fifth, communicate clearly. Make sure your players understand what you're asking them to do. Complex tactics are useless if players don't understand them. These principles apply whether you're managing a youth team or professional club. The specifics might be different, but the underlying approach is valuable at any level. Amorim's impact on Portuguese football. It's worth noting the impact Amorim has had on Portuguese football as a whole. Before him, Portuguese clubs had fallen into a bit of a rut tactically. There was a lot of talent, but the coaching wasn't always at the highest level. Amorim brought new ideas and new energy. His success at Sporting inspired other clubs and managers. Young coaches in Portugal now look at what he's done and see what's possible. He's also helped develop a new generation of Portuguese players who are tactically educated and flexible. These players are now moving to clubs across Europe and taking these skills with them. This is part of Amorim's legacy, regardless of what he does next in his career. He's raised the level of coaching in his country and contributed to the development of Portuguese football. The importance of context. One final point that's really important: Amorim's flexibility shows that he understands context matters in football. What works for Manchester City with their resources and players won't work for a smaller club. What works in the Premier League might not work in La Liga or Serie A. What works against a defensive team won't work against an attacking one. Context is everything. The best managers understand this. They don't just copy what successful teams do. They think about their own situation and figure out what's best for them. This is why Amorim's approach is so smart. By being flexible, he's acknowledging that there's no one perfect way to play football. It depends on your players, your opponents, your league, your resources, and dozens of other factors. Managers who understand context and adapt accordingly give themselves the best chance of success. Conclusion. So there you have it. We've taken a deep dive into what Ruben Amorim means when he says, "I don't play one system." This isn't just a throwaway comment or a soundbite for the media. It's a window into his coaching philosophy and what makes him such an exciting manager. Amorim has shown that you can have a clear identity and playing style while still being flexible and adaptable. You don't have to choose between principles and pragmatism. You can be both principled and practical. His success at Sporting CP proved that this approach works. He won titles, developed players, and played attractive football. And he did it by being smart, by adapting to different situations, and by never getting stuck in one way of thinking. As football continues to evolve, we need more managers like Amorim. Managers who think critically about the game, who aren't afraid to try new things, and who put winning and player development above ego and stubbornness. Whether he stays in Portugal or moves to one of Europe's biggest clubs, Amorim has already made his mark. He's shown what modern coaching can look like. He's inspired other managers. And he's proved that flexibility isn't weakness, it's intelligence. What do you think about Amorim's approach? Do you prefer managers who stick to their principles no matter what, or do you value flexibility and adaptation? Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe to United Daily Updates on YouTube if you haven't already. We bring you content like this regularly, along with all the latest news and analysis. Hit that bell icon so you never miss an upload. Thanks for reading, and we'll see you in the next one. Until then, keep the faith and keep supporting your team. Football is beautiful because there are so many different ways to play it, and managers like Ruben Amorim remind us of that every time they step onto the touchline. Take care everyone, and we'll catch you soon with more insights, more analysis, and more reasons to love this beautiful game. Stay tuned to United Daily Updates, your trusted source for everything football.